Today we are filming in a hurricane. This is the Honda ZR-V, an SUV hybrid that sits smack bang in the middle of the HR-V and the CR-V in the Japanese brand's range. And believe it or not, under the metal, DNA-wise, this car shares a lot with the latest generation of the Honda Civic, which is a very good thing because that is a very good car. And if I'm honest, I think its looks are a bit all over the place. It's like the designer stylized about 70% of it and then kind of left 30% of it a bit bland. I mean, it's like bam, ooh, ah, wah. I mean, overall, I think it is a decent looking car. It just feels like there's a few missed opportunities in certain areas. Anyway, as I mentioned, this is a hybrid. It's not an all-electric car, it's not a plug-in hybrid, it's just a self-charging regular hybrid. I say regular, I don't think there's anything regular about this car because I think it is bloody brilliant when it comes to its hybrid system anyway. But first, let's jump in and look at the interior. Whew. Whew. It is minging out there, but I tell you what, it isn't minging in here. It's a very, very nice interior. And you know what? It's very minimal. Reminds me of sort of the way Mazdas have been for years. Very minimal. You've only got a few toggles down here. That's all you really need. Climate control toggles, actually. Very good. But it feels quite upmarket. You've got a nice chunky steering wheel. You've got padded leather all over the place, which has actually got a bit of a gold tinge. Bit of a strange choice, but it does look nice. You've got these solid leather seats. You've got a head-up display, slick graphics behind the steering wheel, and you've got this mammoth center console as well, which actually looks a bit like the fuel tank of a motorbike. You've also got a solid touchscreen system. Now, it's not the fanciest or best looking system on the market, but it is very slick, it's very responsive, and easy to navigate, which nowadays is a bit of a rarity. Now, there are 3 trim levels to choose from: Elegant, Sport and Advanced. We have the flagship Advanced model, which adds the likes of a Bose sound system, panoramic glass roof, adaptive headlights. But even though we've got the flagship model, which does look very nice, I don't think you even need to go to flagship in the ZR-V range. Even entry-level models get the likes of a reversing camera, sat-nav, adaptive cruise control and heated front seats. And I love the fact that you get new and old USB connections down here, conveniently placed where you probably put your phone as well. All very good. So, is it all positive and hunky-dory in here? Well, not quite. Although it does feel quite upmarket in here at first glance, there are a few little bits that aren't quite as finessed as its more premium rivals. Obviously, it's cheaper than the more premium rivals, but you know, it is things that you notice. Like, for example, this center console and the door here, if you whack your leg against them, they do wiggle a bit. Like, the build quality's not, you know, I'm not going to say that, I am going to say the word, it's not German, as they say. But yeah, you know, that does feel a little bit cheap in places. Also, the door bins, you can't fit a big bottle in. I had to basically go all around the car to fit my big sports bottle here. Under the armrest there is the only place it fits. The cup holders here are pretty good though, and the glove box is a decent size. But yeah, there's only a little whiff of cheapness, like I say, in the center console and the door moving there, which is a bit odd. And the only other sort of qualm I have with the interior here is that there's no gear selector. And I know people moan when cars have buttons like this, especially hybrids, instead of a gear selector, but there just seems something intuitive to me that something should go forward to go and something should go back to reverse. You shouldn't have buttons. Now, the rear seats are quite similar to the cabin in the fact that they look well-rounded and perfect from the off, but they do have a few holes in them. Now, something I do like about the rear, you can put your feet under the seat in front. The floor's nice and flat, so moving around's quite easy to do. You've got lots of knee room here. You've got a fold-down armrest here, USB-C charging there, and some pretty funky touch-sensitive lights. Now, there are a few little problems I have with the rear. First off, headroom. We've got the panoramic roof as part of the flagship trim. It does eat into headroom. I'm like 5'7" and I can just about get away, and I'm a short guy, just about get away with it, but if you're 6 foot, you're gonna ruin your hair. You do also sit with your knees quite high back here, so long journeys, you might start to feel the strain on your legs. Like I say, you can put your feet under the seat in front, but that's not a very good compromise as far as I'm concerned. Also, while you can move around very easily, if you get stiffed with sitting in this middle seat, you're not going to be very comfortable if you sat beside 2 adults or maybe 2 baby seats. Now, apart from its overall storage space being a little bit disappointing, we're talking hatchback territory of around 380 litres, this is a very well-rounded boot. First off, very low load lift, I mean you could kneel or stand in that, very easy to get shopping in or pets in and out. Speaking of pets, we've got a protective boot floor. We just get that out so we can show you the rest of the boot. We've also got, okay, we've got no underfloor storage, but the parcel shelf does fold in half and fold under the floor very easily, very neatly. These seats also fold down completely flat, and okay, you don't have quick release levers, you can fold them from back here very easily. Look at that, nice and flat. But perhaps my favourite feature of the boot is the walk away boot close button. Right, it might sound really simple, but you've got a button here to close the automatic boot, or you can press this button, just clicked it now, it will only close when you walk away. So let's say you've got shopping in one hand, your kid in the other hand, you walk away like this, oh no, I've left the boot open. Oh, like magic. Now, I may have poked a lot of tiny little holes in the ZR-V's character so far, rightfully so I think, but on the road, the ZR-V is a lot more finessed and well-rounded, to use that term again. In fact, I'd go as far to say it's probably the best hybrid system I've ever driven. So powering the ZR-V is a 2-litre petrol engine, which sits alongside 2 electric motors and a small battery. Now, all in you get around 180 horsepower, and pretty decent power on tap. But unlike a lot of other hybrids, where the second you even think about accelerating harshly, you get a grrrr like that from the petrol engine, you don't get that with the ZR-V, and there's a very good reason for that. The reason being that 2-litre petrol I mentioned earlier very, very rarely actually drives the wheels. Instead, it acts as a generator to charge the battery, which then powers the motors, and you get that electric hybrid feel. So, when you're driving at low speeds, there's a bit of electric power, like you get from other hybrids, but when you start accelerating through urban environments, you still hold on to that electric car feel, thanks to the whole petrol generator setup that I just mentioned. Only under very, very harsh acceleration, you get that grrr. Put my foot down now. There, and that's me flooring it, honestly. But apart from that, you can pretty much drive this ZR-V around and benefit from that instant torque electric car feel. And you even get it coming up to junctions and traffic lights and things like that, and at roundabouts. You know, if you're stopping and starting, you're not going to get the petrol engine just going off its head whenever you put your foot down. You get that electric car feel most of the time, and it's great. It's a breath of fresh air. So yeah, you do get that electric car feel pretty much all the way through the rev range. Well, I say rev range, this is a single speed automatic gearbox, so there's no gear changes to speak of, but Honda has engineered in faux gear changes to keep that acceleration nice and smooth and familiar, should we say. So, you know, when you put your foot down, you get that electric like that, but there's also gear changes to keep it feeling nice and natural. Let's just do a bit of driving here, see how the powertrain acts. So 15 miles an hour in EV mode, 20 miles an hour still in EV mode. Right, okay, 25 miles an hour, we're now in hybrid mode. Still very quiet. It's a very windy day, so you might be hearing some wind, but yeah, I mean, if you're pottering about town, dropping the kids off at school, going to work, I think you're going to feel like you're in an electric car. Honestly, the vast majority of the time. It's just a really nice car to drive. This does very much feel like a hybrid that's got electricity right at its core, and that cannot be said for a lot of other hybrids. You know, you feel like you're on a green street, you feel like you're saving the planet, and you overtake someone on the road, and yeah, you're reminded that you've got a petrol engine under the bonnet. So it feels like an electric car a lot of the time. Does that mean you get next to zero CO2 emissions? Well, no. Aside to its driving characteristics that I just mentioned, the ZR-V does actually have fairly average hybrid fuel economy figures. So you're looking at an average of around 45 miles per gallon, which is pretty easily achievable on a mixture of different roads. And you're still looking at a 31% BIK tax rating for 2023 and 2024. But honestly, aside to that, I do think the hybrid driving characteristics of this car are really worth shouting about, I really do. So what else is there to talk about? Well, the steering is actually quite weighty, it's quite nice, quite easy to have fun with it. It does have an elasticy feel, about a 3/4 of a turn, but you do get used to that quite quickly. The seats are really supportive, nice big windscreen, visibility all round's really good. And the ride's really well balanced as well. I'd say it's pretty spot on. It's not too firm, it's not too soft. It irons out bumps on a country road like this really easy, but even at motorway speeds, it settles down quite easily and doesn't wallow about the place. Now, I wouldn't say it's notably sporty or notably comfy compared to a lot of its rivals. It doesn't necessarily have a standout X factor in terms of dynamics, but again, the way that hybrid system works, I think, is a big highlight in itself. Am I getting old? So, how do we sum up the ZR-V? Well, it's not conventionally wow in terms of interior quality or design, practicality or driving dynamics, but I think it offers enough across the board to entice family car drivers and company car drivers alike, especially if they're after a hybrid system that actually works flawlessly, like it says it should, and if they're after that coveted electric car feeling all the time. And you do get that, like I say, pretty much all the time with the ZR-V on a mixture of different roads. I think it's definitely worth a look and definitely worth a test drive to see whether you think that hybrid system works as well as I think it does. Just going to use this button again. Bye.